This program is paid for by Your Radio Doctor, LLC. All opinions or statements expressed on this program are solely those of Your Radio Doctor and their guests and do not reflect the opinions of WPHT or Audacy. Your Radio Doctor does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, products, physicians, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on Your Radio Doctor. Always consult your own physician.
Good morning and welcome to Your Radio Doctor. I'm your host, Dr. Marianne Ritchie. Thank you. This is very exciting. After 5 years on the air, this is our first show with a live audience, so I appreciate you coming, and I want a round of applause for you, and thank you for coming. So in 1 week, we'll be celebrating our nation's favorite holiday, Thanksgiving Day, and then December will usher in Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day. The American Psychological Association reports that about 89% of Americans experience stress or feel overwhelmed by the holiday season. In response, we have to develop good coping mechanisms because if stress gets the best of us, we sometimes turn to unhealthy tools. So today, our show is called Let's Talk Turkey, How to Navigate the Emotional Challenges of the Holidays. I am so excited that my guests include two of my BFFs, if they admit to that, two of my favorite people, Dr. Joel Fish, a sports psychologist and licensed psychologist. He's the director of the Center for Sports Psychology in Philadelphia, and he's been a consultant for the Philadelphia Sixers, Flyers, Phillies, U.S. Women's National Field Hockey, and National Soccer Team. He's given more than 300 lectures as an NCAA speaker, and he's the author of 101 Ways to Be a Terrific Sports Parent. We need a lot of that. And Ms. Marguerite Schroeder, who is humble beyond description. She's a noted attorney and a public educator extraordinaire and a board member at the Caron Drug and Alcohol Addiction Treatment Centers. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Well, Joel, I'd like to start with, we're talking about the emotions that can be triggered during the holidays. The holidays are meant to be a positive influence on us. So we want to remember that lack of time or financial pressure or family dynamics all come to play. But we should talk about the range of emotions. They're not all negative. It's not all depression, anxiety. There are positive emotions too.
Thank you for having me here, I should say. Thank you all for being here. And 89% is a large number. 89% of anything is a large number to feel overwhelmed or whatever. In my experience, it's that we're going to have heightened emotions during this period, particularly in the anticipatory phase, the week or 10 days before. So whatever emotions we feel about seeing family, friends, or someone we've lost in the last year, family dynamics, what we're going through politically is going to be a challenge for a lot of families this year. To me, emotion's not the enemy. We're going to feel emotions. It's just learning how to manage it, develop a plan for it so we can approach it and maximize the good emotions that come along during this period. And it's usually mixed. We have joy, we have curiosity, and on the other hand, we might have stress, anxiety. But when we have a plan to manage the emotions, the good, the okay, the not okay ones, I think we're better able to have more confidence as we enter the holiday period, and that increases the chances we're going to navigate what we need to navigate in order to get the best of the holidays.
Yeah. And there's so many layers to what you just said. I really, maybe it's just time, not wisdom, but you realize that you appreciate the high points a whole lot more when you can contrast them with the low points. I mean, maybe that's why Mother Nature planned it that way. But so you talk about not suppressing our emotions, but managing them. How do we go about even thinking about that? I
think there's some people, if we have a plan, and there are individual differences, I think some people feel more emotions, let's call it anticipation, a week, 10 days before. Some it's during the actual holiday, sitting across from somebody, and then sometimes it's afterwards in terms of, wow, I wish I could have done that. Why didn't I do that? Why did he say this? Why? So to me, again, I just like to keep it simple. I think if we allow ourselves to visualize, anticipate a good, okay, not okay situation, how do we want to talk in that situation? How do we want to react? That helps us in the moment, because if we've thought it through, when you're in that moment, in my opinion, you can feel like you've been there before. And you feel like you've been there before, you can feel more control. You feel more control, you can feel more confident. So I'm a big one for mentally preparing, visualizing, what if this person says this is how I'm going to respond. Good, okay, not okay. I'm just a big one personally in terms of mentally rehearsing some potentially challenging ones, like role-playing it, looking at yourself in the mirror. Anything we can do to allow ourselves to prepare for what could happen, whether it happens or not, when we enter that moment, I think we're going to be more prepared for it. So those are just some ideas of what managing to me means.
And I guess, too, we've all been through this, and we say, if we could rewind the tape, I would have said it differently. I would have sat in a different chair. I would have chosen not to go, or whatever we look back on. I think one of the things about self-awareness, not that I'm a psychologist, is that you look back and say, at that moment in time, my emotions were here, or the person who wasn't supposed to come showed up, or whatever the situation, and I worked with what I had, and I made the best decision at the time. That's a lesson that we learn after lots of experience. I mean, we did a whole show on you are exactly who you are right now, because every experience you've ever had, every newspaper article, every teacher, whether you're left-handed or right-handed, your position, family, all those things influence how you respond to that trigger right now. Yes?
I think so, and a lot of us bring just the other general personality traits to the holidays. So many of us are still learning to strive for perfection versus being a perfectionist. So if we strive to make the event the best we can, knowing we can't script it, maybe it becomes an opportunity to practice during the holiday, after what went well, then set new goals for how to improve, as opposed to blowing off the good stuff and magnifying the mistakes. It gives us an opportunity to practice evolving some of the other traits that I think are with us most of the time, but can express themselves more in the holiday.
Tweak. Marguerite, knowing that lack of time seems to be one of the top triggers on most people's lists, that's a pretty common challenge for everyone here. How did you manage your time during the holidays when your children were younger and you were a working mother and you had to strike that balance and add the holidays to it?
I didn't. I didn't. I would like to say I did, but that was part of what you were talking about. I did not anticipate. I was in the moment. And therein, I wish I could give the great advice right now, but I think we learn more from what we do incorrectly than what we do correctly. I think we learn from what could have been, should have been, would have been, and then to not repeat it. So the days that I did the traditional route, and I'm going to call it the traditional route, in that even though I did have my own career, but I was raising two stepchildren from the time that they were babies all the way through. I was the typical wife, I guess you would say. I hate to use those terms, but I was. And so what I did is I let all of those other roles, all of those other things consume me in a way. And because they did consume me in a way, I became I would say, the result of what everybody else wanted, what everybody else did, what holidays should be, what kids are going through in terms of holidays in the traditional sense. What are the pressures? What are the outside things? So I don't have the advice of what could be at that point. It took me all the what you shouldn't do. I did not practice those anticipatory things, who's going to be coming into those situations that may or may not cause upheaval. So I'm going to answer it by saying I learned what I should not do in retrospect.
Which is wise in itself.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it is wisdom, because it's also in the repeating to not do it again. I also thought I could handle everything myself. And therein was a great lesson in terms of not seeking help to do even traditional kinds of things, not seeking help in terms of what may or may be, a difficult situation. So I would like to say, in the early days, I could check off everything and everybody was happy and everybody was fine. Maybe I should say everybody else was happy and everybody else did get what they needed, but at my cost.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Spoken like a true mother.
Well, and that could be taken a lot of ways, too. So.
Of course. Well, I guess the word family can be taken in a lot of ways, too, because every family has a different situation, and how do you define family? Family can be your blood relatives or those people who were by your side when you lost your job or you lost a loved one this year, the people that lift you up and love you with not asking anything in return.
The days of perhaps the days never were of traditional families, mother, father, children, grandparents, and everybody in their roles acting properly. You know, the interesting piece about families today, blended families, families of all different genders, families of so many different constructs. So what you said in terms of practicing, in terms of looking at all of those things, and to the best of your ability, anticipating, what may happen, practicing what may happen. So that's a very valuable piece. I'm glad you said that.
Thanks. And I noticed also, because it reminded me, in my opinion, as I listened to you talk, there were a lot of shoulds there.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the anticipation of the holidays, it should be this way, I should.
Right.
That's, in my experience, what drives a lot of the anxiety in stress. And in psychology, we always talk about crossing out that word should and substituting the word choose to. I choose to emphasize this. I choose to delegate that. I choose to lighten up about my attitude. Choose tends to give us more power. I suggest some more control. Should can be coming from who knows where. It usually leads to anxiety, self-criticalness, stress. So I never say to anybody, don't think should. But if you catch yourself and your body's telling you, I'm getting really tense, most times there's a should connected to it. Be interested if you cross that out, substitute the word choose to, and if 1 out of 10 times that helps, that's a strategy to move the emotions and manage them in the right direction.
And then it's amplified on social media, et cetera.
For sure.
And no matter what your age, you're curious and you're going to find clickbait. But we talk about time as being probably one of the most common denominators that lead to stress. Expectations. Like you say, every once in a while I'll watch a Hallmark movie and they're fun and all positive, but I can never, every corner of that house is perfect. Who is that woman? The expectations of the meals, the gifts, budget. What if Santa Claus doesn't have as much money this year as he did last year? How do you explain that to little children? Or if somebody's lost their job, grief. Is it the first holiday that you're experiencing without the loved one you lost a few months ago? Or did you just hear bad news about yourself, a cancer diagnosis? And loneliness. What if somebody's moved away from home, or they're in the service, or they've undergone a recent divorce? There are all those issues that can come into play, yes?
Absolutely. Even in traditional situations, if you want to, talk about some sort of stereotypic thing, the bottom line is that you can't get out of life easy. There are all of those things that will happen to some degree. And it is being able to navigate in some sort of personal way the stresses, the strains, the things, the unanticipated losses. There are certainly the anticipated losses in various ways, but the unanticipated losses. And when we think over the course of the last perhaps 5 to 7 years, through COVID, all of the losses that families had, through any of the external things, the socioeconomic reasons, the losses of jobs. We have been in really heightened times. The political anxiety that we've just recently been through. Just think of all of those differences that may happen in your traditional settings around family tables and in family discussions. So, that the normal things that would happen in the course of daily life or in the course of someone's life, we are all going to face unhappy times in one way or the other. We're all going to face a loss, even in terms of the job I didn't get, the thing that I would have anticipated to get. So,
thanks for that. Let's take a little break, and we'll come back more about navigating those emotional challenges of the holidays. Welcome back to your Radio Doctor. This is so much fun. This is the first time we've recorded the show in front of a live audience, and I thank you for being here. According to the American Psychological Association, 38% of those people surveyed said their stress increased during the holiday season, which we know can lead to physical illness, depression, anxiety, and substance misuse. Our dear guest here today, Marguerite Schroeder, is a woman of many talents with a degree in vocal performance from the Westminster Choir College, a master's in education from Princeton, and a law degree from Rutgers. But she considers her most important achievement to be her degree in alcoholism. During a difficult childhood, her father turned to alcohol and then abandoned the family. She then married a divorced man with 2 children who also leaned on alcohol, which triggered her own alcohol use. She passed up an audition with the Metropolitan Opera. She ended a pregnancy, but after hospitalization for alcohol poisoning, She stopped drinking, devoted herself as a wife and mother for 30 years, aiming to create that perfect picture in an unhealthy marriage. Well, she finally divorced, and when she met another man, after 30 years without a drink, she celebrated with a glass of wine, and 11 days later, she was back in the hospital on a dark path for another 2 years. Once she found help at the Caron Treatment Center, she felt safe, secure, and warm because the staff provided the nurturing and love she had been seeking since the age of 4. I really cannot do justice to Marguerite's story, and she's much more eloquent than I. But once you connected with Caron, she's never left. She was a patient, continues to volunteer, and she's a board member, hoping that her story will encourage somebody else in the dark night of the soul to say, I can do this too. Marguerite, you embody the definition of gratitude. Just as Dr. Fish counsels million-dollar athletes to keep their eye on the ball, knowing that their dad's in the hospital, or a fan is booing them, our goal today is to keep our eye on the meaning of the holidays, beginning with family and loved ones. How do you, by telling your story to other people in treatment at Caron, to keep their eye on the mission of recovery and add the layer of stress of the holidays so they don't return to an unhealthy coping mechanism like alcohol or drugs or cigarettes or gambling? Thank you.
I had to take a breath there because I wondered who you were talking about there for a couple minutes. It's quite a life in different ways. But thank you for the opportunity to express what I'm going to say next, which is, with Thanksgiving coming up next week, it will be my 16th consecutive Thanksgiving of spending the day up at Caron Treatment Centers with patients. It is ready for the tissues now. The first two, I spent the 2 years, 2008, 2009. I eventually will get to answer that question, but having said that, it needs a little background. I was in treatment for all of the holidays, 2008, 2009. So I knew what it was like to actually be in treatment, recuperating, if you want to call it that. The detoxing was brutal because I had multiple relapses. So detoxing, relapses, being in treatment for the 2 years, and having the care, which I never had in my entire life, having the care of that staff, of Caron Treatment Center staff. Actually, I felt like a little kid. I remember driving up to Magic Mountain, as they call it, which it truly is in different ways. I invite all of you just to Google Caron.org, take a look at it. It is really magnificent. So to go through the holidays there, I knew what it was like in different ways. And because of that, I made a vow that no patient would ever be up there during the holidays without somebody to come and visit them. I made that commitment, and as long as my little legs can get up there, I will be up there. So I've stayed close on what it's like to not only go through the holidays, but to be with patients and families watching them. And so when you are in that close environment, in that confinement, you have the best and the worst. You have the worst of what it is that you are going through, what your families may have gone through, and you have the best because what you are also learning is the ways to get through, if you want to call it to get through the emotions, to get through the shoulds we were talking about, to get through the coulds, to get through all of the heartbreaks. And more importantly, I really believe that when you are in those circumstances, you learn the true value that while the calendar says Thanksgiving, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Diwali says all of those things. You learn that every day is a holiday because you have awakened from the bondage of addiction, the bondage of all of those things. So I wear the banner of alcoholism, and wherever I can, people shy away from it. I wish we could get through the stigma. I wish we could get through that. This is not about poor. This is not. It's a non-discriminatory disease. It is the disease of the brain, and we can talk about that later. in different ways. But I digress a whole lot because I just want to put as much into that answer so that you understand that while coming into these things is brutal, the coming out of it and what you learn through recovery. Getting sober, difficult as it may be, is just the first piece. The recovery piece is actually the life-giving piece, the healing of the body, mind, spirit, soul, and understanding what life is really all about, and the gift of it.
As you say, alcoholism is a disease. It's not a choice that you decide that you're going to drink because
you do not come out of the womb, or you do not come out of anything and say, gee, I want to really go into the worst piece of my life. You don't do that. Okay, that, to anyone who might think that it is a choice, it is not a choice. What is a choice is once you learn the skills of staying sober and the prescribed way, quite frankly, of staying sober and being in the community of where you can do that, then the choice is whether or not you will stay sober. That's a different piece.
And in essence, the stress of the holidays, you're helping people realize that every day can be stressful and that the joy is in the recovery. The joy is in saying, I'm here now. It's time to move on and move forward.
The stresses and strains may be amplified, for reasons around the holidays. But the bottom line is the conditions of the human soul, the things that drive us are on a daily basis. What makes us joyful, what makes us grieve, those are things that we carry with us on a day-to-day basis.
Every day's a gift.
Every day is a gift.
Joel, another common trigger for stress, we've alluded to the laundry list, but another big one, of course, is just family dynamics, family politics. We're not even talking about red and blue. But the family politics, I don't want to sit next to Uncle Ned because he's going to be bragging about his high school touchdowns 40 years ago, and he burps a lot. Or Susie never helps with the dishes. But after the recent election season, this year, the elephant in the room, elephant and donkey in the room, is red versus blue. Yeah, red, blue.
Not politically speaking.
No. How does that play into this year, and any suggestions?
It's a challenge. I'm not going to give you an easy answer, and I just have to comment on what Marguerite said, that the courage that it takes for you to come up and express what you did, I really respect, and I know a lot of people do.
Thank you.
And it gives hope, which is important towards any kind of motivation. So I want to honor what you just said there. And that's my segue into your question. Like, what if tends to be negative? What if I say the wrong thing? What if she does it? But as we anticipate the political, seeing somebody who we have some history with, I do believe it's important as a tool to at least consider a positive what if. What if this works out better than I thought?
Yes.
What if we were able to talk about politics and find some kind of middle ground? What if something extraordinary happens tonight? So a lot of the worry and anticipation is negative. To me, at least considering what a positive would look like and then how we might get there is really important. And this is a challenge around the political season, but I do think doing some legwork is important. Help me understand what a comfortable atmosphere is going to be like for you, uncle, aunt, brother, spouse. Like, we may have to agree to disagree. Like, how can we set up this environment so it's meaningful for you? None of us are walking around on eggshells, that kind of thing. Just like I think sometimes it's easier, it's human nature, I get it, to avoid so-and-so just lost somebody. They're coming for the first time. There was a divorce. To have that conversation, help me understand what's the kind of environment that would help you enter this after your loss. Do you want to talk about it? You don't want to talk about it? Should I be the one to say, okay, we're going to have to agree to disagree, let's move on? So I don't think avoiding it, which is the natural thing to do, is the best strategy, because left to its own devices, I think a lot of these simmering conflicts either raise our anxiety so much, or they are more likely to come out in a negative way. So, long-winded answer to say, I think the preparation around what the hot topics might be, and let's take a look at how we can create the best environment so we can maximize the good things on the holiday and avoid crossing a line that is irreparable is what I'm thinking of as you ask that question.
But even if we all walk away with just that idea, that you're coming to the table might be somebody who's going through a big loss this year, whether it be their job or a family member or one of their children got into trouble, whatever it is, give them a call first and say, how would you like us to handle this? That's brilliant, really. It's so thoughtful and calming. Because you're right, anticipation is not knowing what's going to happen and not being able to predict. And I really think, people blame social media. It's not evil in itself, but it amplifies, even if something's posted, even if it's true, but if it's inflammatory, even if it's true and it's not necessary, it gets people agitated. And chaos, if it is untrue, chaos leads to fear, leads to anger, leads to and the whole meaning of the holidays, when we say family, and again, you bring this so brilliantly, family isn't defined by blood. Your family is Caron, I would think, at least part of your family, and near and dear to you, and every family's different, the challenges are different, and you have to learn to go with the flow and think up, as my father used to say.
Yeah, thank you for that beautiful segue. I love it. Let me just, first of all, piggyback on something, and that is you cannot avoid, obviously, certain things. But what you can do is practicing, perhaps, and we do this in recovery, what you will and you will not engage in. What behaviors, what you will discuss what you want. And it certainly doesn't have to be any grand announcement. It's just I call it the recovery skills. Quite frankly, if I had a wish, I would say everybody should be in recovery to understand exactly, because we learn, we don't always accomplish it, but we learn what we do and we do not engage in, because there is this honoring our own journeys in different ways. So very simply, thank you for the segue of Caron is my family, and I call it my family of choice, and I think that is the other piece behind it. I always say that DNA and legal contracts don't necessarily make you family. They make you a relationship, but not necessarily family. And so in my particular case, one of the things that I had to, it was a tough decision. It wasn't done lightly, but being that I was the traditional wife, I was married for 27 years, although I knew now my ex-husband, my then husband, for 35 years, raised 2 stepchildren to adulthood and married and did all the traditional things. This was a family who chose to not participate in my recovery. I was the designated alcoholic. It was my problem. One of the things that Caron Treatment Centers is noted for is the work that they do in treating the family as a unit, because even though there's an identified alcoholic, addict, whatever it may be, but it is a family disease in many ways. And even though you may not manifest the main addiction, but it is a family unit. And so there are family programs, and we can go on forever about that, but they treat the entire family, that even though the person needs the detoxing and the recovery skills, but how do we take that entire family so that each member understands that they have a part in all of this? My husband at that time and my stepchildren chose not to do that. They were offered that. They chose not to do that. And at that point, I had to make a decision. Was I going to try to re-engage them and, quite frankly, run after them the entire rest of my life? Or was I going to say, I only have one life. I don't get another shot at this. I don't get a redo. I've already been through near-death experiences. And because of that, and through wonderful therapy and through the supportive family, I divorced. My stepchildren I wish them well. They're out there somewhere in some land. But I had to rebuild and make a family. I have no brothers, no sisters. I did not know my father's side of the family, so if anybody is out there, I don't know. My mother's side of the family all passed on. So here was Marguerite at the age of 58. And so from the days of 58, I spent my holidays up at Caron, first as a patient, then as a volunteer. And I have to tell you, I came into the most magnificent family you could possibly imagine. And it is because what we have learned in recovery is how to really handle all of those challenges. We don't love each other. There's not this, gee, everybody is wonderful. But we've learned how to navigate through 12-step programs, through Dharma recovery, through SMART recovery, through just the skills in that, and how we are bonded together because we have this disease. So I learned out of wounds can become your gifts. Out of great pain, out of great crises, out of great tragedies can become magnificent lives. But you have to work for them. You have to work for them.
Beautifully well said.
Oh.
Let's take a little break, and when we come back, more on navigating the emotional challenges of the holidays. And welcome back to our final segment of Your Radio Doctor. We are learning beautiful thoughts from you, Marguerite, and Joel. I think for Christmas or maybe my birthday, I'm going to ask Santa and the birthday prince for a gift certificate for a weekly visit to Uncle Joel. You're one of those people that no matter what Joel says, it's logical and calming and magnificent. And maybe I'll have to take Marguerite out to lunch every week as well. You brought up one thing that I just thought of while you're talking about love. Love means a lot of different things to the different people. I remember in school memorizing that run has 57 different definitions. A run in your stocking, a run down the street, a home run. But love is defined so differently by every person you might ask. I think you do love the people at Caron. It's just like as a physician, I love everybody who's willing to trust me to take care of them, but it means I'm going to treat them the same way, no matter where they come from, shape, size, whatever their complaint is. I don't have to like everyone, but loving them means you're approaching every person you meet that you do, as you described so beautifully, as my kindred spirit, because a lot of people that have trouble with alcohol don't choose to move on, and maybe that's part of the disease, but we're learning so many beautiful thoughts from both of you, and I appreciate that. What are some of the tips that we would ask people to take away? We talk about accept imperfection. We have a son who says 80-20. He gets a lot more done in a day than I do because I'll be sitting at the table and my napkin's like this, and my husband to tease me, will move it this way and I move it back. So the bows don't have to be perfect on every package, and the decorations, we already talked about that, don't have to be perfect. Budget, bigger is not always better. I think the most important thing we're talking about today is respecting differences. When will our culture come back to being comfortable with listening to the other person? You might learn something you don't know about the topic, or you might learn something about yourself. Yes? We use the example of government politics or world politics, because if everybody in the room has the same opinion, maybe we're not thinking. Is that a question that you'd address?
Well, let's hope we get better at listening to each other for sure. As we get ready for Thanksgiving, though, we can't script it. That's the challenge, I think. And it's going to sound basic, but in terms of a mindset, controlling what you can, letting go what you can't, control the controllables. And I'm just a big person to write those things down. I can control the preparations that I do. I can't control what other people think about it. I can control my own opinion. Do I choose to express it or not? I can't control somebody else's. That is part of the preparation. A mindset and attitude can maybe take the edge off the anxiety, 3, 5, 10%, which to me makes us feel better. We're just talking about managing the emotions 3, 5, 10%, not making them go away. And the other thing that I've been thinking about is, as I hear Marguerite talk, and again, it's going to sound basic, but it's so hard, is attitude. I heard this week, and I've been doing this psychology work for a long time. When things happen that we don't like, and we get frustrated or angry, which is the emotion that can get in the way of us really loving, we do have a choice or a mindset. We can be bitter or better from it. The bitterness is the festering anger, or without minimizing it, finding ways to manage the frustration, anger, Okay, how can I learn? How can I improve from it? Opportunity, if you will. In the holiday period, without sounding, in my opinion, I hope not too Pollyannish, there is going to be opportunity for us to learn more about ourselves, somebody else, to practice some skills, to learn from what we would do different, build on what we do well. So it's those kinds of ideas and tools, but it's a mindset, I think, Marianne, that I think can really help us navigate the holidays to get the best out of it and minimize the uncomfortable parts of it.
And if you do run into a difficult person, maybe stop before you react and say, maybe they just got bad news. I mean, this is so first grade, but maybe they've just been through a fear or a loss that they're not talking about. My daughter mentioned that she stopped and dropped some treats off at school the other day, and somebody at the school, who most of the time lets you walk into the office or the class, or whatever she did, who kind of chastised her. And she learned later that that was a person who had gone through quite a big loss this year, and it was just a spontaneous thing. And maybe your patience or act of kindness will go a long way and let them realize that you appreciate them as well.
I'm smiling because as you were talking about this, and when you led in with your question, where my mind went are, once again, 2 gifts of recovery. I really recommend that everybody go to some 12-step program, because one of the things that we do and by the way, all of us, every single person, and perhaps it's a judgment that is unsolicited, but we all carry something, whatever it may be. There is a wound, there is a whatever, and there's a 12-step program for everything you could possibly imagine. Mine is, I think my new 12-step program is shoes. I don't need any more shoes. But having said that, and one of the skills that we practice, it's called no crosstalk. We're so, as a society, we somehow think we're called upon that we have to give an opinion, or we have to agree, or we have to disagree verbally, or whatever. And you will sit through meetings after meetings, where someone will, after you do the perfunctory openings and things like that, where someone is going to share. They're going to share their experience, their strength, their hope. They're going to share where they are at the moment. And when they share at the moment, in 12-step meetings, you do not comment. There's not crosstalk. So that is in the room. And it's a great practice because someone may have expressed their greatest joy, their greatest pain, their greatest, some of the 12-step programs really are in detail about different things. And at that moment, you get to practice your own, what does it bring up in you? What is it solicit from you, or what is it unsolicit from you? So I think that's one thing. And the other thing is, I was just thinking about all the therapy sessions in different ways, where people share and are guided in what should or should not be said, what could or could not be said, or how does someone really feel. So I'm going to give some tangible advice about that, is participate in a 12-step program to really learn how to either just sit and listen. The other thing, too, and I had to learn this, is many times you can say to someone, do you just want me to listen, or do you want me to respond? And that is so significant, because most of us just want an ear, so anyway.
That is a magnificent point. If we learn nothing else today, I have beautiful sisters here, my blood sisters and my other and my whole family. But
we have programs for all of that, by the way.
No, but I'm the baby of the family, so I know nothing. But it's all good. You do have a tendency to want to finish the other person's sentence, or say, "Yeah, I know what you mean." And sometimes the gift is just put the Scotch tape right here. Yeah.
Yeah, I found out usually when the unsolicited advice is given, it's really just that. It's given but not necessarily received. It's more, and I call this, some people just want to add things in to see that they're still relevant in some way, and it's unnecessary.
Well, again, I think the culture's swayed now by social media, lets everybody be an expert. Everybody gets on there. Not everybody, but people say things. Maybe it just feels good to get off your chest. Maybe, in the old days when we'd go on a retreat, or teachers would try to get us thinking, that say, if you're really upset about something and you're really angry with somebody, sit down, write them a letter, tear it up, put it in the trash can. Then it's out of view, you haven't offended them, and perhaps you'll anticipate your next conversation, or how you keep those holidays peaceful, because you're going to say, I won't go there. And eventually, maybe we'll be able to exchange ideas and really appreciate each other a little bit better. let's take a little break, and I want everybody's brains to start to spin and ask questions of our guests.
Your Radio Doctor with Dr. Marianne Ritchie is presented exclusively by Independence Blue Cross.
Welcome back to your Radio Doctor. I'm very happy to open the floor now to our audience, and anybody who has a question, you're welcome to ask.
Hi, I'm Grace. Thank you, Marguerite, for sharing your story. And I have a question for everyone, but in particular, Dr. Joel. So, say you've been anticipating and you've been practicing in the mirror, and Thanksgiving comes and you do find yourself in the middle of a family blowout. What advice do you have to move on from that or to make amends for that? How should you best deal with the aftermath of that sort of thing?
That's a great question, because we can mentally prepare all we want, but we can't script necessarily an event. And I'm just a big believer, and Marianne, you alluded to this before, sometimes when the emotion's starting to escalate, to really take that deep breath.
Pause.
Slow down, like I'm doing with you right now. Relax your body language, because when you slow down, heartbeat slows down, blood pressure slows down, blood rate slows down. So if someone's talking to you really passionate and you respond even more passionate, how are they going to respond? More passionate. But if we de-escalate, it increases the chances. First off, we can control our own blood pressure, because we can't control what they're going to do. But it maybe de-escalates the conversation. And the other thought I had, Grace, is that self-talk is really an important thing. The messages we give to ourselves in those moments of conflict can really help us manage those emotions. How could he? Self-talk while that rant's going on, stay cool. How could I? While that feeling's going on, trust myself. Or chill, as my kids would say. That when we talk that way in the middle of a conflict, we can have an anchor for our thought, and we don't overthink it. Maybe we don't say something that might escalate it more. So in the moment, because we can only control certain things, nobody can get in our gut and force our blood pressure to go up. Nobody can get in our head and force us to think negative. I'm encouraged by that, because those are the kinds of ideas and tools, I think, in the heat of the moment that can help one stay calm. And then when you're calmer, then you have, I trust your instincts, everybody else's. What choice do I have now to follow up? Do I stay in the conversation? I leave. I stay in the room? I don't. I'm more assertive. I'm upset by what you said, or choose not to say anything. Let it roll off my back, go in one way or out the other. A lot of that choice is predicated on making sure our emotions aren't too high or too low at that moment. So I hope those thoughts answer your question.
Could I add, if I may? In my early days, it's one of the perhaps negative skills about when you're getting into negotiations, or when you're getting into, direct questioning and argument with attorneys and all of those things. Everybody really wants to kind of battle at one another. And there are two things. One is knowing the art of the pause. And I had to, was a very big challenge for me, because at the moment when you're triggered, right, you're triggered, whatever that energy is that is brought up in you. You want to come back at someone, and it's usually a mistake, but it's learning the art of the pause. At the very moment that and you can feel it, you can really feel that rise. And that's when that art of the pause, that absolute quiet, it's almost like a shutdown. It's a shutdown, it's a pause, and it is a really deep breath. And at that moment, if in your mind, you can kind of say to yourself, do I respond, or do I just pause here for a moment? It could bring the level down. You used a word, do you make amends? What it gives you is that art of the pause, and perhaps later in some moment of clarity, if you feel that you, whoever it may be, in some way have exacerbated the situation, aggravated the situation, in that moment of clarity, in that moment of maybe discussing with someone, you will, perhaps with some wise advice, know if you need to go back and privately speak to someone to really see if there's something that could be repaired, if it is necessary. So I think we just did the yin and yang of, how do you handle those moments? And it happens to all of us. you know.
And maybe one of the positives about the holiday season is that at the end or the beginning, whatever you want to call New Year's Day, we celebrate because it's a chance to start over. A new year, new goals, new ideas. I'm going to exercise, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to do whatever is in the forefront of your mind. But every day is a new beginning. Our father was so adorable. We had very wise, beautiful parents. And my father, who was a funeral director, who had to infuse people with hope on a daily basis. You've lost your loved one, comfort people. He'd say to us, if you're really upset about, I didn't do well on a test or whatever you think, he'd say, go to bed, and when you wake up tomorrow, the sun will be up and everything will feel better. And even though that wasn't always completely true, I went to bed and I could sleep better because I knew the next day was a chance to open a new door and go in a new direction. And that's what you're saying. That's what you live. And that's what you infuse into your family, which, as we say, I think love is an element there because love means forgiveness. Family equals love equals forgiveness. So if you do have a clash, then how do you repair it, or what do you do after that, I think is the question. And say, what could I have done better? It's not all about, well, you really upset me. And to that point, we had somebody write in a question, what do you do if somebody calls you or emails and says, I'm not coming if cousin Sally is there because she's the opposite color from me? How are you going to respond to that?
I mean, I think that, if you will, it's better that somebody tell you that before than at the moment see someone and turn around. But, you know, when it comes to the holiday, it's not always logical, it's emotional. So I think I have to understand that. And I just think that we want to do what we can to create the most comfortable space and inclusive space. And if somebody's making accusations, threats, or demands, I won't go with so-and-so, we can control what we can. I hope you think otherwise, in my opinion. But I'm creating an environment here, everybody's welcome, and I trust that if you see so-and-so, you're going to respectfully treat that person, and they'll respectfully treat you.
You're keeping your eye on the mission. The mission is coming together, love. Any other questions for Marguerite or Joel?
Thank you. I'm a man, who's had to confront my own demons over decades. And something I learned, the pastoral theologian out of Yale Divinity, Henri Nouwen, used a phrase, wounded healer.
Yes.
And I'm in that role now. But what I have found is that while I've dealt with my baggage, many people in the room are not dealing with their baggage. So to me, it's a two-sided affair. I have to confront my end, but also with compassion recognize that maybe the guy across the table hasn't had the benefit to understand that. And so it allows for compassion rather than abrasiveness. Maybe, I'd love your feedback on that.
So that's the wounded healer, Caron.
Yes.
Yeah. Really the only person we can have any control over is ourselves, right? All of us come into this life, all of us, live our lives with our own wounds, our own gifts, our own demons, all of those things. And you use the word compassion. It's very difficult in heated moments, to understand that kindness and compassion above everything else is something, first of all, that we have to show to ourselves. And many times, what is coming at us in a very wounded way. And at that moment, perhaps the kindness and compassion that we can show to the other person is really that moment of self-restraint. And just to come into a space of our own. We have a phrase at Caron Treatment Centers: we're going to love you until you love yourself. And I knew what I was like in the early days of sobriety. I was angry, rageful. Oh my God, that Marguerite, it's hard for me to kind of identify with her. I was met at the worst possible moments. I was met with kindness, compassion, and love and understanding. And it's something that I get to practice myself. So when I'm going to be up on that campus on Thanksgiving and speaking to patients, I can guarantee you, or their families, they're going to be coming up at me with, just all the anger and rage and hurt. Many times that voice that's coming at us, that big loud voice, is coming from someone else's pain that we have no clue what that might be. You look at me here now, but if I were to say to you, when I was 4 years old, I was tied to a water heater and burned by my mother, in different ways. You would say, well, how could that be? But that was in here someplace. So we never know when we see someone what they are really, really going through. And, to understand at perhaps the worst moment, maybe it's the test of us. Where are we in our own lives, in our own souls at that moment when all that big stuff is coming at us? I don't even know if I've answered it, but it was more of a just from the heart.
If I can add, and we're all believers in love and compassion, of course. Having said that, from the self-care perspective, maybe this holiday is too hot to handle for some people in this room. Like, I believe in helping and compassion, of course, and being a savior, but I don't believe in being a martyr necessarily. And so maybe if there's some family dynamic going on, knowing yourself, you're just not in a place yet that I can deal with this. I just believe in that choice thing. Maybe this year we give ourselves at least an option. I choose to have an alternative Thanksgiving this year. It doesn't mean we're never going to join our family again. But I really, really think for those of us that are still works in progress, that there's some situations where we'd be throwing ourselves into the deep end of the pool and we don't know how to swim yet. And I don't think that's necessarily a healthy choice either. So I just want to put that out there in terms of choices that many of us are going to have to make as we get ready for Thanksgiving and the holidays.
Yeah. Well, in the words of the philosophers Immanuel Kant, Socrates, one of those smart dudes, know thyself and nothing to excess. Know your limitations. Think about it, as you say, just the thought of being more prepared. Call the person who's been hurting, or if somebody calls you, say, all right, the door is open. You might not get dessert if you become naughty, but you're welcome. But understand that everybody else is here because I've invited them, and I'm creating an atmosphere of comfort and love and forgiveness. If you've spoken out of turn, you're still welcome, but just understand that the other person might be hurting as well. And I think the final message is what I've learned along the way, and I try to teach my own children, is you can't be happy unless you're grateful. And you can't be grateful unless you're humble. Nobody's perfect. You know, the other negative thing about social media amplifying people's thoughts is everybody's an expert. Everybody knows, everybody has an opinion. That's great. Everybody's empowered. I'd love to see that word taken out of the dictionary, because empowered means, you know, I'm the king of the heap here. Marguerite, final words?
Every day is a gift. Even on our worst day, it's a gift that we have that gift of life for that day, and how are we going to spend it? One of the greatest things, you know, certainly holidays give you many, many different opportunities. We live in a time when so many people are hurting and so many people need help in so many different ways. And so what I do it because in the sense of spending time with the people in treatment. But what I guess my parting thought just in terms of a holiday is we all have the opportunity in some small way to make someone else's day a holiday.
Beautiful. Joel, any parting words?
Well, I appreciate everybody coming and their questions and being here with Marguerite. And you've helped me think through there's some things we can do before the holiday, visualize, mentally prepare during the holiday, those deep breaths, self-talk. And then Margaret used the word, after the holiday, we can make amends. If need be, we can say, I'm sorry. And that's liberating for me as someone who can be really hard on himself. So I think we've really talked a lot about before, during, and after the holidays, what we can do to give us a better chance to manage our emotions, those 3 or 5%, so we can get the most out of our holidays and minimize the hard parts of the holidays. So thanks for the opportunity.
Forgiveness, being willing to say, even if I think I'm right, I don't have to be right. That's the whole meaning of family, love, gratitude. Every day is a gift. I want to say a special thank you to Marguerite Schroeder from Caron Treatment Centers, Joel Extraordinaire Fish, licensed psychologist and sports psychologist. That's why our teams are winners. Thanks to you, Joel. And thank you to our beautiful audience and the questions and being here today. It was really wonderful. Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Happy New Year.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to Your Radio Doctor every Saturday afternoon at 5 p.m. Listen to any of our shows and all of our shows again on Audacy.com. That's AUDACY. Thanks to our exclusive sponsor, Independence Blue Cross, for their continued support and their trust in my content. And a special thank you to our audience for coming today and sharing the holiday spirit. Give yourselves another big round of applause, please. Friends, at this time of gratitude, please consider donating to Diapers for Darlings, our campaign to share with needy mothers, buy a bag of disposable diapers, wet ones. You can visit our website, yougivegoods.com. That's yougivegoods.com at this time of rampant inflation. Please continue to pray for peace in our troubled world, our beloved country, in our families, and in each of our own hearts. This is your radio doctor, Marianne Ritchie, wishing you a happy, healthy, and safe week with the ones you love, and always here to remind you that your health is your wealth.
Thanks for listening to Your Radio Doctor, Dr. Marianne Ritchie, presented exclusively by Independence Blue Cross. To contact Dr. Marianne and to listen to today's show as well as past shows, visit yourradiodoctor.com.